Boys and girls, I know some of you aren't done eating. Tough. No, we're going to proceed with the evening, and I'll tell you what's going to happen so you'll know every step of the way what's expected of you. First, I'll tell you who I am. My name is Betty Ammon, and I work at Missoula Public Library in Missoula, Montana, which just happens to be Montana's Library of the Year. Just thought I'd mention that. I'm also the chair of the Young Readers' Choice Committee for the Pacific Northwest Library Association. You are supposed to be at the Young Readers' Choice Banquet. Now, if you're at the wrong place, you can get up and leave now. Here's what will happen. I'll say a few witty, wonderful things, and then I'll introduce a wittier speaker, and then I'll come back and say a few more things and introduce another witty speaker, and then the two witty speakers will autograph books, okay? Now, their books will be for sale at that end of the room after they're done speaking. One of them will be seated here, and one will be seated there, and you can line up in a neat and orderly fashion and get your books autographed. Now, it's really helpful if you write the name of the person you want the book autographed to and slip it inside the book. Nobody's picking up your tickets. Those are really neat to write names of people you want books autographed for. Any questions? Oh, you're so well behaved. I'm very pleased. It's great. Well, this is actually a momentous event for the Young Readers' Choice Award. This award's been going on for 53 years, but to my knowledge, at least in my happening with this award, this is the first time we've had a banquet. Usually we have a nice, respectable luncheon, and that's great, but this is obviously even greater. And I'm wondering if many of you have never been to a banquet like this where children's librarians are usually the main attendants. Some of you are new faces. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. No, I'll tell you a little bit about the Young Readers' Choice Award. I said it was 53 years old. It is. It's the oldest Children's Choice Award in the United States. It's the one that all the other ones are based on, pretty much. And it's something I think that we in the Northwest should feel really proud and pleased about because it's really important. It's the only Children's Choice Award that is international because the Pacific Northwest Library Association includes Alberta and British Columbia. Those Canadian provinces participate in the award. We started a senior division portion of this award 3 years ago in celebration of the 50th anniversary. And this is the third year that teenagers have read and voted on their favorite books. And it's been an up-and-coming, struggling sort of award, but we feel like it's very worthwhile, and we'll keep at it. Plus, we get to have two authors come to talk to us, so that's worth it. I thought I'd give you a little idea of how many kids vote in this award, because I think you'll be amazed. Let's see, about 10 years ago, no, I can't read my, Dave, you taught me how to do percentages, and I wrote it all down and I forgot it. I'll just tell you this, there's been a 150% increase in the last 10 years in the voting and participation. This last year, over 75,000 kids read and voted in this award, and this is in our pretty sparsely populated area. And the reason that happens is because of people like Cooney and Jerry Spinelli who write wonderful books, and because of people like you who buy these books for kids and make them available for kids to read. And I will thank you on behalf of all the kids who will never say thank you to you, but really do thank you, because forever their lives are better for the books that you make available to them. And over 75,000 kids got smarter this year because of us, and I think that's something really to be proud of. I'll be introducing both of the speakers, and usually I want to read something aloud to you from one of their books, because I often think that the author's words are the best way to explain to you how a book is and what the flavor of the book is. Actually, but I lost all the copies of Face on the Milk Carton were checked out, which should make you feel very good. That's okay. I thought, oh, I know how I wanted to introduce you. I saw this movie a couple months ago. It was kind of a bad movie. It was called The Gun in Betty Lou's Handbag. And you, some of you know, you've seen it. It's about a librarian, right? Well, my name's Betty, and I'm going to tell you a secret, and I don't want you to tell anybody, but my middle name is Lou. And so it was required that I watch this movie. Well, I didn't think the movie was too great. I thought it had a lot of stereotypes, not only librarian stereotypes, but other things as well. But the thing that made me the angriest was there was a library scene, and a young girl, a teenage girl, went to Betty Lou, the librarian, and said, "Can you find me a good mystery to read?" And she pulled off the shelf a Nancy Drew book. If that girl came to my library, I'd give her a book by Caroline B. Cooney. This is the Young Reader's Choice Award medal, and you'll be able to admire it as you have her autograph a book for you later. Congratulations. Thank you. Break your glasses.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Well, I've been blessed with 3 children, and on these 3 children, all my books are based. My oldest is Louisa. She's the family intellectual, and she has to represent us entirely in this field. She's the only child in American education who actually liked Moby Dick and went on to read all of Herman Melville's other books. You know, it's been hard to base a story on Louisa. There isn't a whole lot to write about your well-adjusted academic and intellectual who always has a date. I finally managed to wedge her into a book called Flight 116 is Down. Louisa became an ambulance volunteer at 16 in our little town, and I got a chance to write about the absolute best kids. As you know, the absolute best kids don't usually make good copy. So I had to have a big plane crash in order to jazz it up a little bit. But Louisa made her one and only appearance in that particular book. And my second child is Sarah. Now, Sarah's always had 2 goals in life. It's nice to have a kid with goals. The first was to be popular, which she always achieved but never seemed to notice it. You know, like, "Mom, the phone has only rung 20 times tonight." You know, and her other goal in life was to be a cheerleader. Boy, have I gotten mileage out of my daughter's cheerleading. I've supported my family in that for years. When she was in 7th grade and she was trying out for the cheerleading squad, one of my editors in New York said to me, "Caroline, as a feminist, how do you feel about the fact that your daughter's only goal in life is to be a cheerleader?" And I said, "Well, I would rather she had lice than became a cheerleader." And they said, "That is a book. Stop it. We want you to write the story of you, the obnoxious, domineering feminist mother, who won't even let her sweet little 13-year-old be a cheerleader." Well, Sarah went on to be useful to me over the years. For example, there was the beauty pageant book. My editor called up and she said, "I have this wonderful idea for a book. It's going to be about beauty pageants." Well, if you know my opinion of cheerleading, I mean, you can imagine what's going to be a beauty pageant. She said, "I even know the plot. We're going to have 2 sisters, and the older sister's hobby will be entering and, of course, winning beauty pageants, and the younger sister's this dud who, like, carries the hairdryer." And I said, "That is sick and perverted. You know, what kind of parents would allow their daughters to have this existence? And how are these girls ever going to be friends?" And Beverly goes, "Yeah, great story." Libraries, for once in my life, failed me. I had to have on-the-site research, so I said to my oldest daughter, Louisa, "Louisa, would you please be in a beauty pageant for me?" And Louisa said, "Ma, I'd rather die in Iraq." So I was a little craftier with Sarah. I said, "Sarah, you want to go to college? You're going to be in a beauty pageant." So when it came time to write about the exploiting, manipulative mother, you know, I had it down. But then there's Harold. Now Harold is my son. He recently shaved his head so he would look more threatening. And he does. This kid has been a handful all of his life. He also did not learn to read in the time he spent in school from K through 6. Now, in a family where reading and scholarship is everything, it's pretty hard on the kid who can't participate in it at all. And you can certainly imagine the behavior problems that this caused in school. Because whenever he was called upon to read aloud, which he couldn't do, he'd resort to something like snapping the legs off the desk so that he could visit the principal for a while. He finally learned to read in 7th grade. I shouldn't exaggerate and say that he learned to read, but the little black spots on the page did actually coalesce into words. It was just that, the words didn't make it into sentences. Well, all of his friends in 7th grade were reading Stephen King. And this was a kid who could barely make it through Cat in the Hat. But he went to the mall and he bought a Stephen King and carried it around for a while. But you can only carry this deception so far because this is a book that kids book talk to each other. So they say things like, well, have you gotten the part where this happened? Well, no, he hadn't opened the book yet. And there was no point in opening it. He couldn't read it. So his sisters and I began taking turns reading chapters out loud to him. I was going to have my mother participate in this, so I only had to read every 4th chapter, but my mother's idea of a good book is Little Women, so maybe I shouldn't bring her into this. You know how long Stephen King books are, and so you can imagine for how many years we were reading alternate chapters aloud to this kid. At that time we had neighbors. Both the parents were family psychotherapists, and they were always offering me little tidbits of advice on how to maybe have a more wholesome family setting. And I remember the time when they asked me what little family activity we would be doing that night, and I said, we'll probably sit around and read Stephen King. Now, for parents and librarians, Sarah and Louisa are a joy. I actually heard Louisa ask our librarian if she could please read his doctoral thesis. Meanwhile, of course, Harold's out and back learning how to be a computer hacker on the library system. But if I had only had Louisa and Sarah, I would be quite an elitist about teenage reading. In fact, I would know nothing. I would be the kind of person for whom a firing squad is too kind. Luckily, I had Harold, and so I know a lot more about teenagers and reading than I would. I was at an ALA convention a few years ago, and a very famous YA writer made a speech in which he said, "I am concerned only with the literate young." Now, I pondered that for a while, and I decided that the literate young will be fine without me, and they'll be fine without you too. It's the not particularly literate young who need us, and they are going to need us every time they walk into a library. So it's the not particularly literate young for whom I'm writing. When I think of Louisa and Sarah reading, I sort of think of kids on a glider in perfect weather. They can just stream along over any book that they want to read. Harold is more like the kid in the rusted-out sedan, with transmission problems. And, the slightest speed bump and he stutters out and he's gone to play Nintendo. So this is the kind of kid that I'm thinking of when I write a book. Well, Harold not only introduced me to what it's like to have a very ill-behaved teenager who can't read, but he also introduced me to real parental worry. With Louisa, you're supposed to worry when she says, "Oh, Mom, we're out of library books." And with Sarah, you're supposed to worry when it's, "Mom, what do I do if both Jason and Joshua ask me out?" But with Harold, you had to worry when he didn't show up again that night. Is this the time he flagged down the motorcycle gang and went to have a full-body tattoo? So, I really know what worry is now. Several years ago, I was in LaGuardia Airport, and that huge airport was papered with homemade missing child posters. I couldn't even bring myself to look at them at first because they represent everybody's deepest horror. But of course, finally, with hundreds of them around, I had to go up. You know what it is to be a voracious reader. You cannot let type go by. So I went up, and here this thing had a rather poorly reproduced black and white photograph of a very small child. And the typing under it revealed that this child had been missing for 15 years. The first thing that you thought was the total futility of this. You can't recognize any 17-year-old from a 2-year-old picture. It doesn't matter how many hundred thousands of people come through that New York airport and look at that picture. Nobody will recognize her. And the second thing you think of are those parents who nevertheless, after all those years, got up that morning with their sheaf of paper and their roll of Scotch tape and drove into New York, still hoping that somebody would tell them where their baby is. But nobody will, because nobody can recognize the picture. And I got on my plane absolutely heartsick, identifying with these parents, when it occurred to me that, of course, there is one person who would recognize that picture, and that is the child herself. Now, mostly book ideas are very hard to come by. I mean, you really slog to get them. But every now and then, there's one where you go, yes, that's a book. So that was definitely a book. And it was one of those ideas where I knew a lot about it right away. I knew right away that I didn't want to do a poster in an airport. I wanted to do a milk carton. And that's because I right away knew the whole first chapter, I would have a nice kid, happy kid, a sunshiny life. Things are good. She's never questioned anything in her whole existence. So that when she picked up that milk carton, and it was her, the ordinariness and the everydayness of the cafeteria would keep right on going around her. But her whole life shifts over a space. And she has to know at that moment that everything her life is based on is evil and not good. I read a lot of horror novels, but this is not a handy little vampire here. This is the real 1990s horror that so many of us parents have, and that actually in the last few months have been so dramatized in the news. And the other thing that I knew I wanted to write about this was parental worry. For those of us who've had difficult children, parental worry is this relentless burden that even as the years go by doesn't seem to lessen. And I wanted to write a book for kids about a parent's worry. Of course, the big problem for that is that, like, kids don't care if you worry. If they'd be home for supper if they cared that you worried, see, and they don't want to know about this in the book. In fact, that's a good way to stop a kid from reading a book, is to fill it up with all these worried parents. See, get those parents off the stage and have them stop worrying about me. So it was a real challenge to write this. Now I have a second page. The next thing that I wanted to concentrate on was the ending of the book, because I wanted the reader to have to go on worrying, just as those parents who put up those posters had to go on worrying. So constructing the ending of this book took me a lot of time, many months in fact, long after I'd finished the rest of it. So it would be an ending, but kids would still worry. Well, one of the neat things about writing for this age group is that these guys write back to you by the armload, and they have all written to me about the ending of Face on the Milk Carton. And here's a typical remark about the ending of Face on the Milk Carton. You call that an ending? No one ever mentioned the parents' worry. You know, I don't know if I made a big impression on them that way, but several people did call to ask if the boy and girl got married. You know, so it turned out not to be a suspense novel in their eyes, just a romance. Could you please write about their wedding? I was never going to do a sequel to Face on the Milk Carton because it seemed to me that that would ruin the whole point of it, that you would be able to stop worrying because you would know. And it was not planned with a sequel in mind. But Sarah, who has sort of been my in-house editor since 6th grade, suddenly hopped up off the couch one day about a year ago and she said, Mom, I know what happened to Janie. And she gave me a plot that was absolutely brilliant, and I called up my editor and we went into contract, and I paid my daughter what I thought was a reasonable sum. Now that you know that she is fond of things like cheerleading and popularity, you also know that she went straight to the Gap and spent all this money on that pathetic excuse of clone clothing that they turn out. And now all three of my kids are on the phone to me all the time with ideas for which they would like to pay. I had a bunch of letters about Face on the Milk Carton that I will always cherish. A teacher in a New York State inner city school who taught the at-risk, non-reading high school seniors. Guy's probably burned out by now, so if any of you want his job, you know, I'm sure it's like available. He read them maybe 2/3 of Face on the Milk Carton, and then he told them, if you want to know the rest of it, you'll have to read it yourselves. Which they did, and then for a class assignment, he had them all write to me. And what their letters were not typical fan letters, but very sad little histories of them and their inability to read and what it had done to them in school. And they too finished their letters by saying, "You call that an ending? If this is what books are like, forget it." So in the future, I'm going to try to end my books a little more satisfactorily than that one. But you can certainly tell that what I care about most is my readers' reaction. Reviews are nice, librarians are nice, book lists are nice, all that is nice. But Reader's Choice Award is what is really nice, because if there are 75,000 votes, there must be at least one or two heralds in there voting who actually read a book for the first time, and that's the greatest honor. Thank you very much.
Wow. Aren't you glad you came? Well, did I tell you that the face on the milk carton won the senior division of the Young Readers' Choice? So I got so excited about her being here, I forgot to tell you. Well, it did. It won the senior division, and on that ballot there are 5 books, and kids had to read or have heard at least 2 of the books on the ballot and vote for their favorite, and it was an overwhelming favorite. The winner of the intermediate division was a book that was a Newbery Award winner. That, for a long time, you know, if a book won the Newbery Award, it was kind of the kiss of death as far as kids liking it. Librarians loved it, you know, and it was on everybody's list. And for a while, that was why there were Children's Choice Awards, because the awards that adults gave to kids' books were a lot of times not the same books that kids liked. You know, they were just too adult-like. They had too many things about them that were hard for kids to relate to and hard for kids to understand. Happily enough, the Newbery winner for, what year was it, Jerry? 1991. I'm always so confused about what year is which, was Maniac McGee, and it ended up on the Young Readers' Choice ballot for 1993. And an overwhelming number of kids liked it the best, which is kind of a testimony, I think, to the people who are choosing best books for kids now, to adults. I mean, maybe their taste is getting better. I don't know if that might be it. I do have to read you just a little bit of Maniac McGee. And a lot of you know the story of this orphan boy who really changes the lives of everybody in this Pennsylvania town. And I'm especially fond of Maniac because I'm married to my own personal Pennsylvania maniac. And also, I wanted to read this one section. It's a book talk from a book that some people I know wrote. And it's about baseball, and you know how the Phillies are doing this year. It's pretty good, right? Well, this section of the book is about 12-year-old McNabb, and he's quite the baseball player. Nobody can hit anything that he throws. The huge 12-year-old McNabb, he'd just thrown 35 strikes for a record, and it looked like nobody was going to be able to hit his pitches. And then up to the plate comes scroungy Maniac McGee. And these are Jerry's words. McNabb fired. The kid swung. The batters in line automatically turned their eyes to the backstop where the ball should be, but it wasn't there. It was in the air, riding on a beeline right out to McNabb's head, the same line it came in on, only faster. McNabb froze, then flinched just in time. The ball missed his head, but nipped the bill of his cap and sent it spinning like a flying saucer out to shortstop. The ball landed in the second base dust and rolled all the way to the fence in center field. Dead silence. Nobody moved. Well, that's part of Maniac McGee. That's supposed to make you want to read the book. You do, don't you? That's right. I've heard Jerry Spinelli talk, and he talks the way he writes. He talks to us about the things that matter that sometimes we don't think about. And I have to tell you, Jerry, I heard you talk last fall in Missoula, and you said some things that I've remembered frequently in the last few months, and I saved them to myself myself a lot of times, and I thank you very much for that, and I thank you for writing Maniac McGee, and I'd like to present you with the 1993 Young Reader's Choice Award. I have to kiss him on both cheeks. I didn't.
Thank you, Betty. It was one of my earliest dreams to be an Olympic star and to find myself one day bowing my head to receive a medal, and it just happened. Oh, it's good to be back in Montana. I was here, I had never been to Montana in my life, and here I've been here twice within 10 months. Except last time I was in Kalispell, it was just long enough for the plane I was on to turn around and then to fly 17 minutes back to Missoula, which is where I was going. Yeah, it's wonderful to be in Montana where a river runs through it, and so does, as it turns out, Maniac McGee. And I have a news flash for you. I just found out from my agent that a deal has been agreed to, and Maniac McGee will be a Disney movie, probably released in Christmas '95. I understand that the kid that's going to play Maniac will be Elijah Wood, who is currently in the Disney movie Huck Finn. I'm kind of glad it's not Macaulay Culkin. Carolyn, my only regret is that we haven't met before. You are terrific. Thank you for signing my books. I was the first one to have her sign a book. Buddy Brathwaite was a friend of mine, a co-conspirator, back in the railroad tightrope walking days, and one of the neatest kids I ever knew. He could split wood with his two-fingered whistle, spit between his front teeth, find a salamander under a rock on the first try, and walk into the dump where the rats were in his bare feet. He could crack 10 twin popsicles 10 times in a row and never be left with 3/4 in one hand and 1/4 in the other. That tells you all you need to know. His eyes were always scanning the gutters, searching for silver-colored chewing gum wrappers. He was making them into a ball that he said would someday be big and heavy enough to steamroller down the street and squash Ginny Sokolowski's vicious dungaree-nipping pet duck like a bug. He was a genius. He disappeared from my life back in junior high school, just sort of drifted away. It was a couple years before I realized he was gone. Several years ago, I heard from Buddy Brathwaite again. Gave me a call. I was excited. My old buddy, I could feel the steel rail under my foot, He was calling, asking how I was. Turns out that my name, since we had recently been a mortgage buyer, had turned up on some mailing lists. And he was calling. He wondered if we needed any insurance. Suddenly I could see him perfectly through the telephone. The blow-dried hair, the immaculate cuticles, socks. We hung up after less than 5 minutes. I couldn't bring myself to ask how big his silver wrapper ball ever got. But that was time enough to discover something I never would have believed before. Buddy Brathwaite had become boring. But haven't we all? Compared to the hut-building, gutter-rummaging, chew-the-pegging characters we used to be, most of us have turned out to be pretty boring. Each of us in our kidhoods was a Huckleberry Finn. drifting on a current that seemed tortuously slow at times, poling for the shore to check out every slightest glimmer in the trees, the taste of Brussels sprouts, the first forward roll, cruising a mall without a curse word, making your own grilled cheese sandwich, the weird way you felt when Sally Duffy was scrunched next to you in the mob coming out of the movie, the thousand landfalls of our adolescence. And the current flows faster and faster, adulthood's delta looms, and one day we look to get our bearings and find that we are out to sea. No difference for me. I learned to write a check, change a tire, fix a toilet. But part of me is still back in Norristown, Pennsylvania, on George Street, daring my best pal to go sit on the front steps of the seldom seen man who lives across the street, sprinting along the train tracks with a stopwatch in my hand, imagining myself a future Olympic champion, quivering at the plate during a Little League game because I am facing the Red Sox fearsome fastballer, John Ribble, going to Ralphie Cotman's 12th birthday party and feeling proud because I was the only white kid there. So you see, when I set out to write my 6th novel, I didn't have to go far to find a story. All I had to do was get in touch with myself, with a kid in me. And Norristown became 2 mills, and the events and dreams and fears and befuddlements and wishes of my life conspired to tell a tale called Maniac McGee. Of course, the story has themes such as brotherhood and literacy and homelessness, but at bottom it is simply a story about kidhood and how, looking back, it appears to us big people. What we see is a time as wondrous as a legend, as heroic as any Homeric epic. A time when every neighborhood had a Maniac McGee. And every maniac had a secret. That amazing and wonderful things are possible if only we do not grow up too much. Caroline gets letters. I get letters. And when I heard I had 15 minutes, I figured I'm going to give half of this time to the people that really count, the real writers. This is the best part of the job, right? Dear Mr. Spinelli, your book, Maniac McGee, was a wonderful contribution to literature. That's not the funny part. I don't know. You Northwest people. This book was not only funny, it was short. In fan mail, as in all gifts, it's the thought that counts. Your book was simply fastidious. I hear that you are author of the month. Well, 1,000 congratulations to you. From Lynn in Hilliard, Ohio. You probably tell everyone the same thing about being an author, but could you tell me something I don't already know? I'm very smart. Taylorsville, North Carolina. I would like to meet you, but there's a fat chance of that happening. Sometimes you have to pay close attention. I hope you read my letter, and if so, you're probably on this line. Think about it. not mean as much to you because you're not seeing me in my usual habitat. I wear what you see about once a year. Usually my shirt tail is hanging out, that's blue jeans and sneakers. When you came to our school, I thought I'd see a big tall man in a suit looking rich. When I saw you, I got very relaxed. I get phone numbers. My number is 1-215-480-0356. Don't call collect. My phone number is 878-0292. Call on Tuesday or Friday. Sincerely yours, Leon Harstock, Dalran Hill School, Dalran, Saudi Arabia. I hear from future competition. Dear Mr. Spinelli, I am planning to be an author when I join the workforce in years to come. Please send me materials related to the preparation I will need for my career. Pictures, pamphlets, and educational requirements will be most appreciated. We have Alberta and British Columbia here. This is from Ontario. Dear Mr. Spinelli, our class just finished reading your book, Maniac McGee. I admit that it was better than my stories. Oh yeah, I am that 12-year-old genius of writing, Tim Drumroll Crouch. Heard of me? Ring a bell? Who cares? Caroline's kids, you ever wonder where we get this stuff? It's right here. I get bribes. Is there any chance of you coming to our class and having lunch? Mrs. Lewis said she would pay for it. I would come if I were offered a free lunch. If you come to our class, we will give you a duck. My teacher, I'm trying to give you the A material. My teacher is a big fan of yours. I'm a little fan of yours. Because I don't know you that well, that's why. Do you ever sit back and say, I can't believe how successful I am? Dear Mr. Spinelli, your books are absolutely wonderful. Surprisingly, my brother, my sister, my mom, and my dad have not heard of you. Strange, isn't it? Kids will tell you like it is. It would be real nice if you could continue writing forever. Unfortunately, you can't. Some letters downright chatty, if not informative. So, what's going on in your life? Oh, me, I'm fine. My name is Kellyanne Cobb. And of course, yours is Jerry Spinelli. Which apparently would have been news to this kid. Dear Mr. Paulson, sometimes you find out more than you ever wanted to know. Mr. Spinelli. I am 14 years of age and 6 feet tall. My hobbies are football, and I also enjoy playing baseball and running. I am a firefighter for Alton Volunteer Fire Department, and I am very strange also. I do strange things. I prefer not to go into detail. Sometimes the writer gets a little mixed up. You're my #1 fan. I tell kids, I make a deal with them. I say, you guys give me an idea or a title that I use in a book, and I'll put your name in it. I'll give you credit for it. One kid did that, and I put his name in the book. He gave me the book, the title of my book, Who Ran My Underwear Up the Flagpole. He also suggested who put the bird poop in my cereal. That always gets a good laugh, so I guess I'm going to have to write. If anybody has an idea what kind of a book I could write with that title. I've always thought, you know, just write the book and give it a title like that, whether it applies or not. There was, as I recall back, there was an avant-garde play some 30, 40 years ago or maybe longer called The Bald Soprano. There was a bald soprano nowhere in the play. It had nothing to do with what it was just called. Here's a more fully developed idea from Denise Franklin. I was thinking, since you are a great author, you could probably make a book about a boy in my class. He has a big problem. He is always flicking his boogers in someone's face, hair, or clothes. He always is annoying someone, and he talks loud. I was thinking you could write a book about him. It would probably be called Picking and Flicking. I know Betty wanted me to give a speech, but I think this is better. Enough about your book. Let's talk about me. Kids are masters of non sequitur. I'm sure you know that. I live in a brown 3-story house. I have 3 brothers. I have 4 cats and 1 dog. We had 5 cats, but my mom is pregnant. From Belleville, Illinois. Dear Mr. Spinelli, you probably don't believe me, but you opened my eyes about life. You opened the door to my heart and walked in. I collect shot glasses. Sometimes a letter isn't funny. Sometimes it simply touches you. Can you come to my school? I want to meet you and watch you give a speech. Mickey Marie Lur's Indiana School for the Deaf. My first fan letter. My first one, and as you're about to see, memorable for one other reason. On the occasion of his having read my first book, Space Station 7th Grade. I am only 8, but I read your book anyway. I hope you write another book about Jason and Richie. Honestly, it was better than any of Judy Blume's books. My visit to Chatham Park School, I thought was pleasantly uneventful, until I got this letter. You might imagine the stern countenance of the motivator in this case. Dear Mr. Spinelli, I am very sorry that I was playing tic-tac-toe while you were talking. I know that I had no right to it. I should have listened to you. It was positively mean and rude of me and my friend to play tic-tac-toe right under your nose. I regret it terribly, and I seriously would understand if you hated me. I like your talk and your books anyhow. If you do come back to Chatham, please do, even after the rudeness of my friend and me. I hope that you get treated more kindly than this. Like I said before, I am really very, very sorry that I played tic-tac-toe instead of listening to you. Please do not unlike the school because of our terrible rudeness. With all our heart, we are sorry. Most sincerely, Katie Rose Loftus. You will search through Shakespeare and not find such heartfelt sincerity. Fittingly and finally, Mr. Spinelli, I will not say I totally enjoyed your talk, because that would be untrue. Mr. Spinelli, you are a great author. However, you, in my eyes, do need to work on your group speaking skills. To echo what Carolyn said, it's about the kids. We have formulas for them. How to succeed? Let's turn them upside down. Let's ask that they seek their happiness not so much at the finish line as in the running. That they have the strength not to lift tremendous weights, but one fallen friend. That they learn to fight their own battles with a never-ending string of temporary ceasefires. Not that the occasion make them smile, but that their smile make the occasion. That their bridges be built, not over rivers, but over misunderstanding. That their wealth be not in their banks, but in their hearts. That they gain power, not over others, but over themselves. That they bow not to little people with big titles, but to big people with little titles. That their names be household words, not throughout the land, but in their own households. That their monuments be found not in public parks, but in the lives of those they've touched. Alberta, British Columbia, Alaska, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, thank you.
Montana's always going to want to have a joint conference with PNLA, so we get to do this every year, I think. Thank you so much. You make our lives better, you made our conference wonderful, and you make our kids, our collective kids, happier every year with all that you do. And I thank you for all of them and from all of us. Thanks a lot. I forgot to tell you one more thing that's going to happen. For about the last 10 years, the association has produced a videotape that teachers and librarians throughout the Northwest use to promote the Young Reader's Choice Award, to introduce the books to students so they can be interested in reading. And for the last 3 years, we've produced this tape in Missoula, Montana, and we've used real live kids who do short annotated book talks about each title. And we always traditionally premiere the videotape at this conference. This year you'll see a slightly different look. We did it outside. 2 years before this we shot it in Missoula Public Library. And we thought we'd try using some of the river runs through it kind of scenery. So the first portion is videotaped in a ski area. For those of you from the Missoula area, it's at Marshall Ski Area. And then they started mowing the lawn. So the senior division portion is taped in my backyard. But you can't tell that. So you're the only ones who'll know that, I think. What we'll do is I'll start the videotape, and we'll crank it up pretty loud so you can hear. But those of you, we'll have Caroline and Jerry come up here and we'll start the autographing process. I am so gratified to see all of you here. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate the support that Young Readers' Choice gets from all the people who help out so much. And in fact, I almost forgot, I'd like to recognize a couple people, and this is kind of last but not least. Terry Heyer, would you stand up? Terry Heyer is the Idaho representative for Young Readers' Choice. She's also the storekeeper of the Young Readers' Choice store, and she can sell you the videotape later on, and not tonight, but later, and posters and ballots and seals, and the seal walked into a bar. Now, that always makes me say that. And we do have the Alaska rep here. Stetson, where are you? There you are. Would you stand up? The Alaska rep's here. We have co-reps in Alaska, but the other one's not here. Right? Linda's not here. We have our two co-reps from Washington State here. Ruth and Gail, where are you? There they are. And I don't think the Oregon reps here. Oh, okay. Or the British Columbia or Alberta rep. But these people work awfully hard getting out information about Young Readers' Choice to people in their state, and I'm real grateful to them. And if anybody here is interested in being the Young Readers' Choice chair next year, just let me know. I thank you all for coming. I thank you for your enthusiastic response to our authors, and I invite you to Eugene next year, and we'll see who wins. Thanks a lot.